something that's on the agenda. We had that on Monday night. We didn't call it officially. Whatever.
Really? I hadn't noticed.
So there's a quorum being present, 4 out of 5, and we do anticipate that Larry will be calling in at some point during the meeting. Just in terms of the public meeting, I realize we don't really have like a citizens forums element to this. So for future agendas, we should add that citizens forum on there so we have an opportunity for citizens to speak. If there is any item on the agenda that people want to speak on, you're more than welcome to do so.
I did the minutes last time.
And the first item on the public meeting, item letter A, approval of the minutes from December 20th. Hopefully everyone had an opportunity to review. I thought for the most part pretty comprehensive, a good overview. Are there any, let me entertain a motion and a second to have then discussion.
I move we accept them as written.
I'll second that.
Dawn and Judith.
Noting that they're extremely well done.
They are.
They are.
Yeah.
So
Which is
you
high
heard what the
praise
measure is.
This is high praise indeed from me.
Who took the
Thanks.
It
It
was
minutes?
actually Kevin.
It was
and,
My
Kevin.
nickname was the
it
Minuteman.
Was Kevin?
It was Kevin and Charlene.
Yeah,
Oh,
So
okay.
it was a tag team effort.
yeah.
But he's not free to come up and help? No?
Well, he's
Just in
an
case she
intern.
needs to
and
present? Oh,
She's
So
not
now
presuming you're
that-
going to do anything bad.
okay.
Now that
No,
Andrea is
just in case
officially
you
on
need to be more
board,
active.
we're gonna have CDP will cover the meetings and assist us in this, so I was gonna have them do minutes. At least in my 2 cents is I think it's good that if people are doing the minutes and they also understand what they're involved in, it helps to make things more efficient.
Yep.
So having her do the minutes is not just a task because you're the
Understand.
newest person, it's something that, from my standpoint, it is a natural workflow of what we do. So I have a motion and a second. Any questions or other comments in terms of it? If seeing none,
None.
all in favor?
Don't you have to do a roll call?
Larry's not on yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm with you.
All right.
Yeah.
Just trying to hold you back here.
So Larry's not on yet, so the record reflects. So all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, all opposed. Any opposed? None. So 4-0. I did have an opportunity to meet with folks from the Lower Cape Community Housing, Jeff Locantara. I know that they have a meeting later on, and they asked to be a little early on the agenda. So I'd like to, at this time, give you the opportunity to invite you up front. And my understanding is that you'd like to just provide an overview of your group, and I think as the Affordable Housing Trust, the more we can establish strategic partnerships with people in the community, I think the better off we'll be. So I'll turn it over to
Okay,
Art and to
thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Art Bowden, and this is Jeff Cantori, and Jeff is basically the founder and the person with the vision, and I'm just a foot soldier in the battle on housing. Anyways, I'm just going to give you the short version, because we had a nice sit-down meeting with Mr. Clark a week or so ago, and we went into a lot of nuts and bolts of what we've been doing, some of the things we've been thinking about. But I think for today, I don't want to plow the field again completely. But if there's any questions, we'll definitely answer them. First of all, I just want to bore you with our, we always like to start out with the mission statement, so we kind of get the feel of where we are and what's happening. Our mission statement is this: our goal is to provide affordable housing for special needs adults 22 plus, 22 years and older, who can live independently. We also provide support and advocacy to help these individuals achieve independent living. So short and sweet, and so we're looking for affordable housing for young adults, and they can live independently with a social component built into the housing. Now just a little overview. We've established we're a nonprofit. We're a 5013 nonprofit organization with the state of Massachusetts as a non-stock corporation. We have spent the last year, or plus I should say, meeting with various professionals, various affiliates with housing and low-income persons and special needs population to kind of formulate our ideas and see what direction we should be going in. And just a quick overview to some of the people we've been meeting with. Foremost is Jay Colburn of Community Development Partnership. Jay basically had the best piece of advice for us. And his advice was to partner with somebody. Initially, we kind of thought, well, we could go out on our own, you know, raise funding and do things. But it became pretty obvious that it was going to be a very daunting task. And when we sat down with Jay kind of, you know, showed a light on it and said, you know, why try to invent the wheel again? You're going to spend a lot of time in the trenches and may get someplace and maybe not. But the best thing to do is to partner with another housing entity and see if you can, you know, get your end goal with a partner. So with that in mind, that's pretty much the direction we've been focusing on now. Some of the people we met with, community builders. We don't have our little presentation with us. We had the good opportunity to go through Providence Landing in Provincetown, and they are the developers, and they also manage the Providence Landing. And if I may take a minute or two, if you're looking at projects, and I would definitely get a hold of community builders and get a walkthrough of Providence Landing. They're very receptive people, easy to talk to, and they love visitors coming to show what they've done with this project in Provincetown.
We even,
as far as I could tell, they left no stone unturned. No stone unturned.
If you could share their contact information so we would have accessibility to them, that would be.
Yeah.
we even went, when we went down there, we even were able to get into, see what a unit looked like. We saw something that was being renovated, and then we saw something that was actually being lived in. And it was next to none.
Yeah, it was a real eye-opener.
It would be something perfect for the town of Harwich.
Yeah. Not only on the aesthetics of the buildings, the multiple buildings, but the grounds and how they've gotten the tenants involved, not just living there, but involved in running the place. So it's like anything else. When you have a little skin in the game, you think, well, this is, you got a little pride of ownership, so to speak. They don't own them, they rent them. But you feel like you belong there, and you feel like you're part of how it's run. You have a say in it, so to speak. So that was very interesting. But we'll get you that information going forward. We've talked to people at Living Independently Forever. Now, this organization, they have a couple locations on Cape Cod, and their model is pretty much like we were looking at. They provide affordable housing for people that have disabilities. And they developed it, and they're running it. And at various times, they will have some vacancies. Apparently, right at this moment, when we were talking to them, they didn't have any vacancies. But they weren't too receptive of looking at them. They didn't have any vision for future projects on their calendar, so to speak. They're located in Hyannis. They have a project in Hyannis, and then they have a project, I believe, in the Sandwich area somewhere, and another one off Cape. And they were, at least from what I could tell, you know, very well organized and run very well, so on and so forth. We talked to Catholic Charities, Capabilities. Talked to these people. And then we've been participating and handing out information at the Cranberry Festival, and also with the strolls. and we attended the Orleans Quality of Life Conference held last fall, handing out information and so on and so forth. So anyways, our mission is to, just to get the word out there, and any project that was going forward that's going to be affordable housing, we'd like to at least make a presentation, or if it could have a handicap/disability component in it. It doesn't have to be 90% of the project, doesn't have to, whatever, as long as it's part of the project. That's what we'd be looking at. And, the numbers would obviously ebb and flow depending on the size of the project. I mean, if it's only one house, well, how are you going to split that? But if it's a 20 or 30 unit project, well, then, you maybe have an inroad. Just to be cognizant of the fact that there's another segment of the population out there that needs affordable housing, and they also have an additional handicap. They have a disability. So that they can kind of getting hammered in two different directions, so to speak, as far as housing goes, So anyways, that's our little spiel. Any
And
questions?
I appreciate you guys coming in. I would certainly encourage you that as we move forward, we do have on the agenda, and I know in the last meeting packet we had was several properties that the town is looking at to convert from town use to affordable housing trust. And, I think one of the things we'll be looking at, if we're successful in that, is once those properties have been moved over to the trust, we will then do kind of diligence to see which ones we can develop first.
Sure.
And,
makes sense.
if there was some interest, in your group that one is more favorable than another, and you mentioned the community builders, I think that having bidders for these projects to work with us is a significant positive.
Right.
And I think your input that you're willing to kind of look at certain parcels and have an interest in these ones that we're considering. We did attach maps to the locations at the last package. We don't have those maps in this package. But, you can see the areas and kind of do an evaluation. And then as we go forward with the bid process and market those properties or bid those properties for affordable housing, you'll have those opportunities to weigh in on that. I would.
Jeff's got some business cards and some flyers. You got them with you, Jeff?
I've got them back
Okay,
there.
grab them, pass them out. You got a captive audience right there.
And then just, I think one of the other points that we had mentioned in our discussion was, I think that if your group wanted to pass out flyers at town meeting and make yourself more known, that
Yeah,
you're.
we've already made that contact, and
Okay.
we're kind of working that through, so.
And that's something that is, you have to go through the moderator and the
Right,
town
yeah,
clerk
well,
for
yeah,
approval
that's been
to do
pointed out to us, right?
You taking care of that? Great.
Thank
Don,
you.
did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I have to preface this by saying this is in no way putting you on the spot, because I'm involved with a bunch of charitables, and it's really
Sure.
tough to answer this question, but I'm just wondering, does anybody, including Barnstable County, have any stats about what the potential constellation, not just in Harwich, but Cape-wide?
The statistics, to answer that question, there's statistics out there. But one of the things we ran across and getting hard statistics, if you look at the housing production plan, so there's got a bulk number of people that are classified with disabilities. But that could mean anything. I mean, that can be any number of, that's a broad brush. And to kind of start breaking that down, that's when it gets a little harder. All these organizations, and there's more than what I've pointed out here that we met with. And all of them were, very, well, they came to our meetings or, so on and so forth, and receptive. And you didn't get the pushback until you said, well, could you share a list of your clients, for housing? We're not trying to take your, pardon the expression, your rice bowl away from you for what services you provide. We're just looking for, a list of clients that would be looking for housing. And it's like,
Well, they can't. I mean, that's a privacy issue.
they can't, they won't, they shouldn't, whatever.
Right.
So,
But they can give you rough numbers of,
yeah.
The reason I was saying that is I suspect, because one of the charities I work with is, deals with low vision and blind, there's stats for.
Mm.
But if the county doesn't ask the human condition reports
Mm.
to catalog any of these things, you don't know.
Yeah.
And
So
it
that-
really is up to them, and I'm kind of thinking that we may want, I think it's commendable. I think that there's a need, just anecdotally. The thing is that you're gonna find when you look for grants and everything, everybody wants to have some numbers of some
Right. Oh,
sort.
see,
It would be, and I'm not expecting you to develop them. I'm just saying, what I suspect is probably true. You don't have at your disposal what that number is, you just
No.
know that there are people.
we have a handful of people that we made contact with, or they're in contact with us and they're interested, but that's just a handful, I have to
Could we
admit.
send, Mr. Chair, a letter to the county and just say the next time you're looking at.
Yeah, see if they can provide data for us on affordable housing
I don't
and
think
and
anybody
folks that are
has this.
special,
Yeah, I know,
And the
it's,
state too.
special
Has-
needs.
There's, the data's out there, it's just getting at it.
yeah.
I'm not sure the data for people who don't
Well,
have the housing, I'm not sure there's any
Would it
data
be
on
the, it
who
would
the
probably be the
potential
Yeah.
people are.
No, but you can extrapolate some things, like
Yeah.
how many are fit into different categories. and
The-
then-
And the other thing is, there's any number of entities out there that provide services, all kinds of services, whether it's, educational, how to live on your own, how to do any number of things, social services, transportation, on and on and on.
Hebert.
But there's only a few that are actually doing housing. There's very few that are doing housing. This Living Independently was one that was doing housing. Capabilities doesn't do housing.
Right.
Uh,
Have they
and
I think the idea is to try to get some numbers
Yeah.
to justify the position, so I think it's probably the commission may have some of that data. I know Heather Harper, when she's done some presentations, I thought that she's had a lot of data on the housing needs on the Cape. I don't know if they get to that level of.
I don't think they
of
do, I
detail.
mean.
I haven't seen it, but what about the human services?
That's,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
and
kind of what I'm
request
thinking,
a
if they're
human
taking
services.
ancillary
They-
services,
yeah.
they could be logically candidates for housing that just aren't being
Well-
captured by anybody.
What about mass
Okay.
rehab?
Mass
Not familiar with
rehab,
that.
they wouldn't be able to tell you individuals,
that-
but they
No,
might
no,
be able
no.
to say
Yeah,
there's
total
X
numbers.
amount in Barnstable
In
County.
countywide,
Yeah.
yeah, I
That-
think countywide probably would be.
Yeah.
that was one of the reasons why we did what we did as far as, going to a stroll and the Cranberry Festival and passing on information, because if the information flows this way, I'm not violating anyone's privacy. They came to me. They picked up a card or picked up a flyer, and they said, oh, by the way, yeah, I have someone that I know or a relative.
Right.
Then,
And we have a
It opens
survey
up.
on our website.
yeah,
I've talked to Stop and Shop, Shaw's, BJ's.
yeah, we
CK
got these in a
Romari.
number, I have 15, 20 different locations around town and stuff.
I'm just trying to be helpful, because when it comes time to look for money, you're competing with other people who are looking for money. And
Right.
if you had some ability to say, there's this many people who are getting services for
Yeah.
disabilities, but there's only this many people who have housing, that's a compelling argument.
That's right.
Do you know Paul Hebert? He's a selectman or counselor, I guess they call it, in Barnstable. He and his wife for many years, what was the name of their, no, they, yeah, I can connect you,
Oh.
and he might be able to help you
Yeah.
find the right
Okay,
places
Perfect.
for the data.
I've heard of the name Heather Harper.
yeah. Oh,
Um,
But if we ask you now, then you're gonna be ready later. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't really think that there's anybody who's compiled that data at all yet, and yet I know that there are people out there who don't have a place that's adaptable.
Well, Judith, you have their card, so you can
Yep.
forward that contact material to them.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Oh,
Just,
good.
I wonder if
Sure.
Cape Cod Village has done this assessment.
I'm sorry?
I wonder if Cape Cod Village has done this assessment.
I don't know, they came in to talk to Hesh before they originally started.
Cape
one of the
Cod, yeah,
partners, and
well-
they didn't have that kind
Really?
of data.
Well, that's another organization we made contact with, but they're looking to the very narrow disability. It's young adults with autism, and it's pinpointed.
It's,
Ours is a little more broad brush, and they're providing live-in services and stuff like that.
Theirs is 20 or 24 units.
Yeah.
Just so you know, community builders, if we were to use them, they only will look at people that want to have 50 units or more.
Because the numbers probably don't work
Well,
otherwise.
that's the other thing
Yeah.
in our travels, and we found out. that,
You know, we've looked at Mashpee.
The smaller
Gardens.
smaller projects,
blended.
it's hard to entice anyone. The
Yeah.
sweet spot is 40, 50 units, usually around 50 units.
And I would
That-
think that you'd also want it near services. I mean, because some of the plots we're considering are so off the beaten track that it doesn't
And-
actually get you with the RTA or.
Well, you know, that's leading down another road, we're going to diverse, but in affordable housing in general, I think you want to build or try to build as close to the services as possible, you know? I mean, not everyone has a car, not everyone has a dependable car, not everyone has, or dependable transportation, let's put it that category.
Yeah.
And, you know, and all that. So, to put it out in a, you know, pardon the expression, the boonies, you know, away from the services, you know, I would never vote against housing, no matter where you're gonna put it, but I have to question where you're putting it, you know what I mean?
That's why I brought it up.
It's, you know.
Okay. I just want to make sure, we have other items on the agenda, so I just want to make sure I
Yeah,
get this
okay,
out
I
here
don't wanna
in
take any
reasonable
more time.
But thank you
Uh,
very much for your
Thank you.
your time and interest.
I'm planning on making a few more comments, but under other business.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thanks.
The next item on the agenda is an update on legal review, the conversion of town-owned property to trust parcels. I'm just gonna kind of go through here, I think, just kind of for the record, that we do have a legal opinion from Sher and Everett that came in at the end of December, that the Willow and Oak Street properties, they were properties originally provided or taken by the town for purposes of affordable housing, but because the trust didn't exist, she's recommending a warrant article be drafted on that. Various other properties that we would want to convey that we asked for legal assistance. It says Earl Street, but technically that's Earl Road, right? Yeah, Earl Road.
I have a comment on that.
Do you want me to just do an overview and then
Yeah,
we have
sure.
questions on it?
When we get to that, I do
We'll
have a
get that on the
comment.
table. On the Earl Road, that, again, she's recommending that if we want to have the property for affordable housing, that they would need to be conveyed specifically to the Affordable Housing Trust. Depot Road, the 5 parcels on Depot Road, the town for tax clearing, title clearing purposes, that recommended a confirmatory taking for the affordable housing purposes. And then Depot Street, again, she recommends to have that switched to the Affordable Housing Trust. And she has been authorized to prepare these articles for the town meeting warrant. The other ones, 265 Sisson Road, the property that's currently being leased to Harwich Junior Theater, whose lease is up through 2034. There's actually land that's a part of that parcel that my understanding is was dedicated for affordable housing purposes. So we just need to provide some additional information for her on that. But I think where the trust just came into existence in last year, that because it wasn't in existence at the time of these transfers, that the confirmatory nature would probably need to be done at town meeting. And then the last one that we had here was the Albro House, to consider that for a conversion to affordable housing as well. So I think that we'll have her draft, so at least we have a place on the warrant for the town to consider. The warrant deadline is, I want to say February 4th, I believe, is the deadline for submission. So we will try to target to get the, at least that warrant articles drafted so they can be considered for town meeting action. What we do, whether we go forward with all of them or half of them or one of them, will be decided as the process works itself out. Questions?
It's not a question.
Or
Mr.
comments?
Chair, I just want, I see what she's done on Earl Road, but it's leaving out a trail of breadcrumbs beyond that. All Road, and I haven't got it now because I didn't have the research done. There was an article in the early 2000s to do affordable housing there, and it stalled because while it wasn't under the jurisdiction of the Rec and Youth, some people at town meeting were arguing that it abuts the parking lot to Earl Road right now, and it would be a logical expansion. Other people just didn't want to do anything, they wanted it passive. But the thought occurs to me that when we're actually discussing that, we probably would want more information. We've also discussed the possibility of flipping some things in order to create a cash pool to be able to do other things.
Yes.
And it's not that it's on the agenda, but the fact is, if we look into what the objections were, we might be able to come up with something like partitioning the property for a quarter of it to be used for the parking lot expansion and selling the other portion in order to generate income to buy other parcels that we might actually be able to get more acreage out of. But I did want us to be mindful of it was brought forward and it was just totally slapped down at that town meeting. Because I was part of the, let's try to go ahead and do something with it. And it didn't happen.
I do concur. I think one of the things that we'll try to do is get some language in these warrant articles that locations such as Earl Road, where we have the opportunity for affordable housing, but we certainly have recreation facilities right next door. We need to be cognizant of that. I think Oak Street, with the proximity to the golf course too, there may be opportunities where we want to make sure that we have dual use. With that being said, real estate and open space, I will ask Andrea here to put together some material. Andrea, right, I had that. Have her put together some material for submission to real estate and open space so we can have that as part of the consideration, as well as for the Board of Selectmen, on what we want to have these parcels be considered for town meeting action.
I will say, just up front, when they consider this, I'm a whole lot more sympathetic to a fixed asset like the Nantucket Sound being in proximity to something than I am to the golf course, where they have some vague possibilities of creating like an academy of golfing, especially given the fact that it's not under the jurisdiction. Those plans have been talked about for like 20 years, and golfing in general has declined over that 20-year period. So that's not a fixed asset, except insofar as it's in proximity to a golf course. They could have an academy for a driving range and practicing anywhere, really. It doesn't have to be at the golf course.
Yeah, I think at least my thought process is the more we can bring a coalition of the willing and not intentionally butt heads with people, we'll probably be better off, better served. And more so just for the expediency of making sure we coordinate. Because there will be times in which we'll have a coordination with the water department for land and different things.
Right.
And I'd rather have people be of the same mindset that we'll be cognizant of other needs in the community beyond just affordable housing.
But I am pointing out it's not under the jurisdiction of the golf
Of
district.
this, yeah. And I do think we need to prepare something. I mean, if people are okay with the scope of what we have this be prepared for not only the warrant article, but really for a presentation to the selectmen in real estate and open space. I appreciate, I think you were able to go to CPC the other night.
Yes, you were there.
I
so
had, I had something else I was unable to attend, but, you know, I think that
Did
we
they
need to have.
vote? 'Cause
They did.
Yes,
they
I
did
was
vote,
there.
okay, because we
That is
left
on the
after the first hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that is on the agenda, so,
Yeah.
but yeah, we did okay, is what I heard.
Can I ask a question about the Earl Road?
Yes.
I'm just thinking ahead, the meeting of the minds thing, what kind of problems might come up? Were there any studies of parking lot and the number of people that use the beach in the summer? I'm thinking with additional foot traffic there, is somebody gonna,
Yeah, I think it's actually interesting reading through the Shereen Everett's materials that she kind of says there's two ways we can do it. We could do all this study work up front, or we can do it after we ask town meeting. And I think I would almost rather go in, especially in terms of timetable-wise, that we would say to town meeting, we'd like to have consideration on these parcels for parcels that are in coordination with other town activities. We want to look at the feasibility of,
We're just
our
asking
concern would be
feasibility.
for affordable housing.
And jurisdiction.
And we would try to get, that, I think to Don's point, if we had the opportunity to sell some of that parcel for income for the trust, that probably would have a good value for us and do some housing component. And then how do we address the issue of parking lot expansion if needed? So that's one where there's probably a few uses that we would want to give consideration for, as opposed to just saying upfront that we just want it for affordable housing.
No, and my question was too, if there are more people there, is there more space on the beach? Is the beach already at capacity, or if that's even a term?
Parking lot is.
The parking lot's at capacity, but,
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of an interesting question, because we
Yeah.
do have some, just as the administrator, that there are sections where people probably would like to have the opportunity to park and then walk to certain other areas where they would be eligible to go to the beach.
yeah.
I know in this area, you know what I'm thinking of, there's a, is it, it's Beach
Thanks.
22 has like an access point, and if people could park and walk, 500 or 1,000 feet, I think that it's not just necessarily right at that beach that's of concern, but
They
is
can
it
use
served
the
for
other.
regional parking
I
area
was
to
wondering
make sure we
about
get.
that too. Yeah,
It's
We
probably
want
not
a
gonna be
shuttle.
yeah.
not gonna be a popular statement that, there are certain people that probably won't like that, but I think from a public standpoint, our job is to benefit the public, and
Sure.
I think
a
keeping
shuttle
that in
would be
mind
great.
has some value. Any other questions or concerns about the research, and is that a plan going forward that we'll have the articles prepared, prepare a report for the selectmen and for real estate and open space to continue to progress down this path?
For the purposes of town meeting, essentially what you're talking about is a jurisdictional change.
A
right?
jurisdictional change
Okay.
To be submitted for February 4th.
to be submitted by February 4th. That would be the
We
target.
do, however, have a fallback position, and you know it.
We could do it on the
In the
special
special.
and do it, and we have until March.
But we would, I-
But time is
basically
short
what I'm
either
saying
way.
is that ultimately, we could still do it during the town meeting period.
Okay.
It would only be on the second night rather than the first night if we missed the first deadline. Our special's within the annual, just so you know that.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments, or just want to make sure I give opportunity on that? Okay, with that as the overview on that. Just development considerations and updates. I think what we'll do is we'll kind of leave these on as a kind of a standard element to have placeholders. So town-sponsored would be conceivably, as we move these parcels from municipal or general municipal jurisdiction to the Affordable Housing Trust, then we would have a spot on the agenda to do RFPs and try to solicit. So we'll keep that as how we're progressing on town-sponsored. So just that's a placeholder. In terms of, I did want to make sure that we had some element on this partnership sponsored. So there are going to be occasions in which folks will come to individual members. I think we had talked a little bit about this at the last meeting, that will have partnership concepts. I think some of these partnership concepts, we may want to have some discussion, and then if we are going to seriously consider partnership, we probably do have to get into executive session for the purposes of negotiating land transactions and RFPs. But the two that have come up, one is fairly recent. This came up on Deacon's Folly Road, the parcel, and it's my understanding, I'm kind of looking at, there's a member of real estate and open space out there, so I want to make sure that Charlene, who is, has another obligation, so was unable to join us this afternoon, had indicated to me that there is an opportunity, I think through real estate and open space, that this parcel has been identified on Deacon's Folly Road, a dead-end area up off of Main Street in West Harwich, that there would be an opportunity potentially for some element of affordable housing and some element of conservation. So was this that it was owner's unknown or tax title?
No, this is owned by.
This is a owner that,
the same gentleman who owned the bog that the trust bought, that's at Deacon's Folly, Sand Pond.
Oh, okay.
Sand Pond.
So if we get additional material, we'll bring that back in the form of a more detailed proposal for that. Go ahead.
Just as a thought, because we're beginning to blaze a trail here. It would seem to me, because real estate and open space has always had the charge of doing both sets of things, assessing land for use and assessing land, actually for sale, and assessing land for procurement to acquire it. I think we would get and I would urge you to do this, I think we'd get ourselves in a whole lot less trouble if you make your assessment on land that might have, be perceived as open space, like Earl Road is one of them, just got trees on it. But if your assessment was done in the same manner that you would do it as if you were looking at acquiring a property, to look at it for unfragmented, unbuilt area, whether it's worthwhile compared to other areas, I think we'd be getting in less trouble, because to the extent that a lot of these properties have woods on them, that doesn't necessarily make them a forest and a wildlife preserve. Its proximity to some,
We have been doing that.
yeah,
We have looked at the old road property.
The only thing, if you want to, just because you're taping it, I'm sorry, but I just want to make sure that people at home can,
I just want to make everybody understand the implications of that, because just because a property is 2 acres and it's got trees on it, doesn't necessarily make it open space in
No,
a formal
no.
way.
And we went through, I've been on the committee for 5 years now. And when I first joined, we were going through, we evaluated every piece of property that the town owned that didn't have a building on it, what should be done with it. We made a series of recommendations, they went nowhere. But we looked at the Earl Road property, we've looked at a number of them. We looked at Sand Road, Sand Pond, there's a big piece of property next to the beach area. Thought maybe that could somehow be related to recreation. We've done evaluations of just about every parcel in town. We have all the documentation on all of this stuff, and we're more than happy to share it.
I'm only bringing that up for the folks who
No,
are
no,
watching.
that's
So
fine.
they have some
So-
assurance that the evaluation's being done
It's there, I mean, we.
on a level playing field.
And when we had this opportunity, I want to say Rich, the family is a Rich family.
a rich family.
Deacon's Folly. And we went out there a couple weeks ago, probably over a month ago, to evaluate the property. It's like, I want to say 6 or 7 acres. And 2 acres of that's right up against Main Street. Next door to it is cluster housing, that was the old Harwich block property. It just struck us as that end of it having less conservation value than the stuff that's in the back that overlooks the bog and so on and so forth. So we came up with the idea, well, maybe we should be looking at this as a team effort to acquire. It's not cheap, because he's looking at it, he's got a subdivision plan in there for like 5 or 6 lots, and but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be looking at it. And he's kind of holding it open, waiting for us to, the town to respond.
At our end, we have tools. I mean, there's tax abilities where you can compensate them in part, or they can create a loss of
Well,
potential revenue to write it off. There's other things we can do that
that's right.
perhaps other people can't do.
That's right. Mike Locke was in on that whole thing, and Mike is a master at doing those, to make it work out for the owner. So we've just been waiting for, it's sitting there, and I think our committee passed it off to this committee already.
Yeah, I don't know if we
We
got
just
a-
got to get together on the
I
whole
don't
thing.
think we received a letter or anything official. We just got the, Charlene had I think she had somebody come in, maybe it was,
She talked with Kathy. She
Kathy
met with
Green.
Kathy.
and she just kind of provided the map.
Yeah.
I think the thing that we probably should do, just to kind of have something official, is just some kind of letter of interest or something, or we'll have to find a mechanism so we can kind of engage people in a more systematic way for the approach we want to take.
Well,
Sounds like he's talking about
Chris,
mixed-use
Chris,
places.
He is talking about.
just, one of my bugaboos is, we have sent out lots of letters to lots of people over long periods of time, over 5 years, to no response. it gets frustrating after a while. I'm extremely frustrated right now because of that. And I've gotten to the point now where I just go to meetings to be able to put in my 2 cents because the written letters don't go anywhere. Nothing happens as a result. We've been making recommendations as a committee for 5 years. No action's been taken. I met this morning with Dan Pelletier because a letter went out to him, a month and a half ago, no response. But we met this morning and I was able to
Yep.
stir him back up again. You guys are doing some, you're new, you're going gung-ho, and I really appreciate it because I really see affordable housing as one of our multi-goals out of real estate and open space. We've got a bunch of ideas. It's just a question of waiting for you guys to organize and come see us, because we've got a bunch of different things that you can look at. I don't know how you identify these properties. Some of these we've already looked at that might be counter to what your recommendations are, but we have some reasons behind it. In other cases, we think we have some other properties that you should be looking at. Maybe not, these aren't the quick hits, but something that should be looked at for your long-term strategies, let's put it that way.
Just to take the opportunity here to kind of make sure people understand in the general public that when we enter into these partnerships with people, the way the partnerships will have to kind of work is we would have to get a letter of kind of outlining the scope of what they have to offer. And then we have to, for procurement reasons, establish what the purpose is of what we want to try to do, put out an RFP and say, is anyone interested?
Mhm.
I've always been of the school of thought, we could do RFPs every week and get no response, and we can really just drive ourselves nuts.
Yep.
Having inquiries from people that say, yes, we're interested in doing something with you, yes, we are gonna help the town meet a need of affordable housing, which is certainly within the public interest for us to do, but we do need to have some level of conversation to know what the marketplace is for these, sponsored partnerships, with the idea that once we go through the formal process and send out an RFP and people respond, that we have a sense that someone's out there. So when I say just a letter of interest, everybody has ideas, and, if they come to us with ideas, I mean, we can't do an RFP for every single idea that comes up to us.
No.
So I think we need some element of form and function of what, people have to offer and what we want to attempt to pursue, because we do have limited funds, and which ones and programs do we want to try to proceed with, I think is going to be an important element. So when I say that, just about having discussions, I mean, if you would certainly encourage the property owner, if they come to you, or certainly if they come to any member, we've had this discussion, to encourage them to just submit a letter of, just really a letter of interest, that they have an interest in dealing with the town to help provide affordable housing.
On this one in particular, though, the reason I said there could be some creative stuff is because you're looking at different possibilities for different parts. So the part that's abutting Main Street, getting back to Art's point about transportation, is somewhat appealing for the affordable housing component.
I don't think there's any public transportation running in that part
It's
of
still
Main Street.
abutting a road.
It's
as
abutting,
opposed to in the
well,
middle of
we were
nowhere.
thinking more about an issue that Art has brought up before of infrastructure. If you're building, you gotta bring infrastructure in a long way. In this case, it's gonna be right at the
I
road.
get that, but you got an existing major road, and my point with that is that there's another portion of it that abuts a bog, which could conceivably get CPC money and/or the Conservation
Yep.
Trust involved. If we could come up with some sort of amalgamation, it's not just affordable housing funds
Right.
you could be looking at.
Right.
No,
You could be looking at a bunch of things.
yeah, from a conservation standpoint, we would rather it not take over the whole lot building down by the bog. And that's why we try to keep an open mind. We're not just about
A spiritually
conservation.
uplifting coalition, if we could get that going.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what we want to be able to do. We want to work with you, help you, and this is what I'm trying to do with the water department, I'm trying to do it with conservation, get everybody together so that it looks like there's a concerted effort from the entire,
I guess my
town
point
hall,
is that
not just one.
it sounds like you've done some looking into this, so you may want to, when you're discussing that, you shoot a memo, but point out, we've looked at this, we think that.
Yeah,
This would
and-
be a good spot for this would be a good spot for that, and
We
How
we
does
would,
the-
we would
yeah.
encourage you, one of your committee, to attend ours periodically.
When
I
do
mean,
you-
that's the key issue, is trying to make sure that we're not going off.
I know,
in-
unfortunately, Real Estate and Open Space has a meeting the same time that actually Don and I attend a DHY. We're trying to do a
When do
community
you
partnership.
We meet, I think it's what, the second Friday at 8:30 in the morning.
Well, I'd be
Yeah, if you're
happy to
able
go to that.
That'd be great.
Can't guarantee every single one,
Yeah.
but.
But, yeah, I mean, our agendas are
Yeah,
always,
yeah, yeah.
I
they're
can make
posted
those
on
as
the
well.
on
No,
the
but
town
I-
website.
Actually, that would be
It's
great.
just-
to
I
have
would,
representation.
yes, 'cause
Please,
I
please.
I thought there
We'd
was
love to
more
have some additional
fluidity.
input.
Is the bog still,
Hmm?
is the bog, are they still farming the bog?
Yes, the trust leases that out to Ray Thatcher.
Okay.
So it's a working bond, but we had actually
No,
looked at, conceptually, when we were doing that in the town meeting, we looked at that and selling it as a heritage and as a conservation dual purpose
Yep.
park.
Yep.
We said that before, and we did this with a couple of things, so
Yeah.
there could be about 3 or 4 different kinds of stakeholders that you could have involved with
Definitely,
this.
yeah, it
That's-
definitely lends itself to
That
this.
is
Very
what,
historic
that's what we try to
bog,
do.
too.
I mean, Art is always
I
very,
saw
very
that
kind about
bog years
reminding
ago,
us at every
actually.
meeting that
Yeah.
housing is important, so.
It's got some very unique berries in that bog.
Kill 3 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Good,
Thank you.
And just for the record, that was Dave Callahan from the Real Estate and Open Space. He made the mistake of saying he was gonna be in the audience, so. In terms of, I do wanna see here, I know Andrea has another commitment, so I wanna make sure that we leave a little bit of time for her. So maybe just give me a heads up, 'cause 4:30 is when you need to depart.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully, we'll progress, but I think at about 4:15, I want to make sure I turn it over to you, so we get you on there. The second one, the partnership sponsored, I did have representatives from Chloe's Path come into the office and met with myself and Charlene, and had expressed a interest in doing a partnership with the town. Chloe's Path, just for reference purposes, is right off of Sisson Road behind the public safety facility. It's a development that some of the primary infrastructure has already been put in. And they had expressed an interest in one of the partners in potentially doing something with the town to have that be considered for affordable housing purposes. I have not had additional follow-up meetings or discussions, so I will hold myself to the same standard of trying to get a letter of interest from them and what they're thinking of, and bring that back for board consideration. But I wanted to at least kind of publicly disclose that that is an area in which we have some activity. The next item on the agenda is the Airbnb discussion. This, I just wanted to, I thought it was important for, the Board of Selectmen had a presentation that was done in front of it by John Giorgio, Town Council. And I guess I want to preface my remarks a little bit by saying, I don't think there's anything that we have to act on immediately in terms of this, but there are elements of this new law that have affordable housing components to it. And I just wanted to kind of highlight those elements, and we can certainly put on for a future agenda if we want to make a formal recommendation at some point to the Board of Selectmen to consider this. But I think with the newness and everything going on, at this point, I think a recommendation to the board would probably be premature. But this is a local acceptance and something that could be done at a later date. Do you have a question?
Mr. Chair, I have even newer newness. At the MMA, Rep. Peak, Senator Sear and John Giorgio also presented this, and it appears that this is more amorphous than you're even thinking, because while the structure's there, while the governor signed it, the actual adoption language, that component about the acceptance of that and
Yeah.
creating, is not finished. They're editing it. So, not sure how you edit.
Post signing?
I was just gonna say, not sure how you edit something after the governor signs it, but this apparently is a,
Well, I would think if
They
it's,
They
a
know
will
local-
hone thought.
procedures or
if it's a local
something.
acceptance, the
Yeah.
question that goes before town meeting sometimes is recommended by DOR for how to formally accept it. So it could be that it's
they're not at
a
that point yet with
regulatory
language.
review,
Yeah.
yeah. The two components, the first component is obviously, maybe not obviously, but is a new tax for short-term rentals. That's something that's more, I think, the domain of the Board of Selectmen. But item 2 and 3 on here are under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 64G, subsection 3DA. It authorizes a community impact fee of not more than 3% of the total amount of rent for each transfer of occupancy for of a professionally managed unit. And then it goes on to describe the end of that, though, that if the town were to collect that, it has a requirement that the impact fee be paid on a monthly basis by the operator directly to the town, and the town is required to dedicate not less than 35% of the community impact fee it receives to affordable housing or local infrastructure projects. So I think where specifically that is a new statute that does provide for a funding source outside of, in our case, outside of the cell towers and outside of CPC funds, that is something I at least wanted to bring up.
And if memory serves, that was one of the points of discussion, that you cannot opt into that and then opt out and then opt in and then opt out.
Right, I think
There's a
once
stability
you're
to
in,
that.
it's like 3 years that you have to be in. DOR did do a little overview on that on one of their seminars. And then item 3 is similar, again, a local acceptance vote at town meeting to impose a community impact fee of not more than 3% upon each transfer of occupancy of a short-term rental that is located within a 2-family or a 3-family dwelling that includes the operator's primary residence, the same requirements for direct payment to the town, and dedicating not less than 35% of the short-term rental impact fees to affordable housing or local infrastructure project may apply. So there's a new law that has 2 very specific components to it. And maybe before the question gets asked, because I know I've already tried to ask, is what the potential impact, what dollars would this actually mean for us? And so far, I haven't been able to identify what that means. I do think where they're in the process of developing the regulations. This was just passed, I think it was on December 27th, so it was right at the end of the calendar year, that they're still in the process of obviously doing the regulatory approvals. But something for folks to give some consideration to, I think maybe not for this town meeting, but certainly for 2020 town meeting, if this is something that seems viable and seems like something we should consider doing, and we can get our hands wrapped around, or our head wrapped around how much potential money this means, it may be worthwhile having a further discussion. So more in the more to come information, but if people want to look it up, the statutory references are on there. On the public relations, actually, we did meet, Charlene and I and Andrea met to kind of go over a little bit of the scope of work. Maybe what we'll do is let's take the public relations piece and this community housing information session, and then the housing coordinator report at this point, so that way we make sure that we get you out of here
All right,
in a
great.
timely fashion.
Thank you. So there are 3 sub-items, and 2 and 3 are actually the same thing. I talked to Charlene to make sure there wasn't something I was missing, but they're the same thing, so it's really 2 items. On the community housing information session, this is something that I'm seeing across the Lower Cape that seems to be really effective as far as getting buy-in from the community. Since this committee is looking at several parcels and these meetings are public, it would be really great to get in front of the issue and be really transparent and provide an opportunity for residents to both learn more about the need in Harwich and also learn more about the specific process that the trust is going through and the town would go through if it were to procure parcels, et cetera. a little bit about the vision, housing production plan, just getting more information out there so that we don't allow an environment of confusion and which leads to myths and rumors. So I talked to Chris about helping to organize something in April, and I'd love to get feedback from you all on what that might look like. But I think that we could definitely work with MHP to get some data together and put some slides together and get some information out that makes sense.
What do you think about timing on that? Any suggestions? I think town meeting is May 7th. So doing something maybe in the middle of April, does that make sense to folks? And just do almost like a community forum type of setup?
Before
Supported by
school
Channel
vacation.
18.
Oh, right.
And Jamie's volunteered
Usually
to
the last-
cover that meeting? No reaction. If we do a community forum in the middle of April, if we could have it televised was the request.
As long as you do it in this room or the multi-purpose room at the community center.
We heard you had a phone app for that.
What's that?
We heard you had a phone app for that if you're driving around town.
So maybe one of the things that we could do is look at availability of the community center, that multi-purpose
Yep.
room. That's a good sized room if we had tables set up and do a presentation.
Acoustics are horrible, though.
Yeah, the acoustics are bad. But we could conceivably do a public meeting here. I don't think this room lends itself as easily to having tables set up for
Yeah, I agree.
public.
Yeah, I think that the formal structure of this room kind of gets away from the tone that you might want to have at an info session.
The problem with the all-purpose room in the community center is it's kind of like meeting in a cavern.
It's true. I ran the Cape Housing Institute in there in the first year, and that was a little bit challenging.
'Cause that turns the environment around and it becomes the audibility problem. It's just
That's
like everything
true.
echoes everywhere.
We can think about that.
Jamie, do you have?
If you do decide to have it in the multi-purpose room, it depends on how you have it set up for speakers, because we only have 6 microphones for that room, but I do supply a PA for that, and the acoustics are better when I am running the meeting, if that helps.
And we
When they're unattended, it's a different story.
And just recently, within the last 6 months, maybe a year, that you've set up that room for video?
So yeah, that we can go live from that room,
video.
which is also an appeal.
If she recorded it rather than live streamed it, we could do it at the cultural center.
No,
Why not?
We don't have fiber to it.
because we don't have any equipment over there. It would be a one camera swivel back and forth kind of thing. It's not conducive to good television.
Is there anything?
The
I
high
know we're
school?
friends because we talk and they ask us for money. How about the high school?
I have no equipment over there either. So that the high school can
The
film
other-
it and
the other
supply me with a
potential-
DVD, but
The
I,
other potential room, just thinking about it, is over at the
kids
public
do it.
safety building. Is that wired for that?
no. So that's why I said if
Or
it's,
wired for
the
emergency
Griffin room or the
management
multi-purpose
purposes.
room are the best option, depending on how many people you want attending.
I'm just thinking, if we have a forum like this, I'd rather have it more intimate where people are
Yeah.
conversational rather than, yes.
Because maybe instead of doing presentations, maybe we do it a little bit more informal and just have tables set up at the multi-purpose room and film certain parts of it. I'll have to give some thought to that, though.
Another thing to consider is whether you're looking to receive feedback from the audience in some way. And there's lots of fun and engaging ways of doing that.
Yeah, I think it should be participatory if
Yeah,
possible.
because
Okay.
Yeah.
We've done some of
the
those.
things that I've
Yes.
seen in the past that are, you sit, we
Yeah.
speak, have a tendency to be preachy and
Boring.
boring,
Yeah.
and people just start buying out of it about 10 minutes in. I'd rather have them engaged.
Okay.
So maybe we'll, Andrea, you can get a hold of Carolyn Carey, see about the
Yep.
availability of the room, and then have maybe some brainstorming session. We'll put it on the next agenda to have a discussion about form and function with that.
The other thing, would you like me to speak to the video?
Keep going, yep.
Yeah, so Chatham has put together some video profiles of residents, stories of affordable housing kind of idea. And it was suggested that that could be a kind of low-hanging fruit that Harwich could do as well. It seems that talking about housing in terms of data isn't really that effective, and people respond a lot more to stories. And so if you can harvest the community for some compelling stories, which obviously exist, that could really get your point across as far as need a lot better.
We have a kind of a divide between Chatham and here. I mean, Harwich took some stabs in the 80s with the HCDC. That it was kind of vogue at that point for everybody to have a community development corporation. So a lot of driftwood is located in housing that Harwich built as affordable. We have the ability, if people are willing to be videotaped, between that and Habitat and Hash, and I'm pretty sure CDP has some stuff where their occupants here, they've been amongst us all along. Nobody identifies them as they because they're like part of the community.
They're us.
I do think one of the things we may want to
They
give
have
some
us.
consideration to is to make sure, and I had this discussion when I met with these folks, we want to make sure that we create what is the face of affordable housing.
It's a lot of
And
faces.
if we have some of the numbers, one of the things that I know we had chatted a little bit about is if a family of four that has an income of 74,000, I think that if I took the town payroll, that probably 60 to 70% of the town payroll probably would qualify to fit that bill. And I think that we need to make sure that we educate people to affordable housing is really just housing for everyone. And it's not, draining people out of Brockton or Boston or what have you. And I think having some videos that show, who are the typical people, maybe some slides that show the typical incomes and the type of, it's the plumbers, it's other people in the community that.
Firefighters, policemen,
Firefighters,
teachers.
police, teachers, paraprofessionals. I mean, you go through our organization and it really is the cross-section of the community. And the other piece, I think, the video from showing what the housing looked like in Mashpee and in Provincetown, that, we're not looking at doing, slum housing. I mean, we really are looking at doing housing that fits into the neighborhoods. It may have a higher level of use, the number of people that can go in there, but the aesthetics of it is going to look pretty much the same as other houses in that area. So I think kind of laying out a little bit of a vision quest early on and start to portray that and getting some of these videos in. I do think we could potentially put them on under even Channel 18, just informational videos related to the trust. The trust would have to be the sponsor of, I think, of those videos to put them on. I'm getting the thumbs up, so we could not put them on, someone couldn't put them on privately, but we could put them on as part of the trust. Okay, do you want to go through your housing coordinator report, and we'll go back to the update on the accessory apartments and the funding?
Yeah, so this is going to be a running item on the agenda for a chance for me to update you on what's going on. Obviously, I'm still very much getting up to speed. So what I wanted to talk to you about, I believe you have my work plan and housing production plan, implementation plan in the packet. And these are documents that Chris and Charlene and I put together to manage the scope of work and to make sure that we're tracking progress on goals, et cetera, et cetera. So the work plan is a living document. It's something that I'll be editing probably daily. In fact, this is a very old version at this point. But this just gives you an idea of how I've laid out the different areas that I can be supportive around and then target specific projects that I'll be working on. And also, this will serve as a template for the monthly report. So I'll be reporting to Chris on a monthly basis, and it'll go into the trust packet on a monthly basis, and I'll be able to share, what's going on. This will be especially interesting once people realize that I'm in town hall on Thursdays, which, by the way, is a thing. I'm doing office hours on Thursdays. Once people realize I'm here, that first part of the office hours, I'll be able to tell you how many people I spoke with, which programs I took advantage of, and then this will actually look a little more interesting to you. But
And it'd be Thursdays from 9 a.m. to
The whole day.
4, so basically the whole day.
Great.
yeah.
And that will be at the, at this point, I think we have scheduled in the library, so if people are familiar with the town hall up by the administration wing.
So today was my first day offering office hours, and I've been busy getting to know people who work at Town Hall and finding the forks and all that. The second document is this housing production plan implementation strategies. This is a tool that actually Brewster developed, and it's been really helpful for them to track progress on their housing production plan goals. And all this is at this point is a dump of the goals and strategies within your existing housing production plan in a template. And I think that the idea here would be that we would be able to add notes in here and track progress on the goals so that we can have one consolidated place where we can see a snapshot in time of what's been accomplished. And obviously some of these things have been accomplished, so it needs to be updated.
Early on, are we gonna, because for those people watching, all housing's not the same. And you've alluded to that here about rehabbing, keeping people in place, building. The question is, where are we in relation to what we'd like to do with rental housing as compared to where we want to be in ownership housing, and how does that impact our strategy, especially near term? I mean, we're getting dirt, but that doesn't necessarily talk to what we're putting on it.
So would you like to break this out between rental and homeownership? Okay.
Yeah, I wonder, under your category on, and this is really the work plan, is exactly what we're trying to do here, is monitor the existing town-owned subsidy housing. Maybe in that inventory, if we had a breakdown, I think that would be good information to kind of know how much is rental, how much is home-owned.
Okay.
Like, for instance, the Habitat stuff has obviously been affordable, but it's been homeowner.
Yeah.
Hesh, CDP are basically the only ones that were providing rental housing. And I'm not sure that we have done a lot of rental housing over the last 20 years.
Yeah,
I'll just voucher.
certainly not in the 5 years.
Am I right?
If you're looking at me, I got a little gift here for,
We didn't talk before.
you're leading into my presentation. I'm
Okay.
gonna make it 30 seconds.
But
Okay.
She's got it on her radar screen now.
Other business.
Okay.
So are people comfortable, and certainly it's a living document on both of these, so if there are suggestions for changes, I think we just took a stab at trying to match up with the work plan that we had in the RFP, so we're not being super creative, we're just matching up with what we had put out there for the bid documents. Okay. So I think we're good with that. So, two other topics before we get to other business, but the update on the accessory apartment zoning bylaw. To my knowledge, the planning board is working on that and will produce something back for town meeting. So they have had 2 discussions, I think, with the Board of Selectmen on this topic, both productive discussions. And just for folks at home, the idea is to, on the accessory use apartments, it's if you have a in-law apartment or want to have someone else be able to go into your dwelling, right now you have to go in front of the planning board and get approval from the planning board. And what this would do is basically make, the update would be to allow for a homeowner that has the ability, that wants to have an apartment or an in-law type apartment within the existing structure of the existing footprint, would just go to the building inspector and do what's called as of right, to accomplish that project as of right. I know, and I've said this before, that I think when people have to go in front of a board, people get a little anxious and they want to have their attorney, they want to make sure they do things right, and they're really increasing the cost to themselves and to the project, and when they go in front of a board. So having an as of right component, I think makes a lot of sense. If someone wants to build a new carriage house or something like that, and you want to change the footprint of your building, that will require the additional going to planning board and getting approval through a special permit. So there is a bifurcation that's occurring to make it a little easier for people to come in and do that. It is kind of interesting in some of these seminars and programs that I've sat in, that not a lot of towns have made use of it. I think actually Harwich, from what I think Charlene said, that I want to say she said we had like 10 to 12, and other towns hadn't had one in the span of a few years. So I think we do have a little bit of a better practice here. I think that will help to facilitate that.
If you're going to do it as of right, the only thing that I'm thinking is, the areas that aren't gonna be sewered, you're gonna have to deal with it being bedroom neutral.
Right, so if you have a 4-bedroom and you're adding
Title
a
V
bedroom,
implications are
you'd have
if
to
you,
sacrifice a bedroom, yeah.
yeah, so, I mean, he would need input from the Board, not the Board of Health, the Health Department, to just check off that, yep, had 4 bedrooms before, they've got an accessory apartment as part of this now, it's got a total of 4 bedrooms now. That's a right that you can exercise, because they don't qualify it by bathrooms,
Right.
so.
It's by bedrooms. I'm doing
Yeah,
a
if
project
it's-
right
if
now
it's bedroom
in
neutral.
Barnstable, it's by right, and the customer is adding an addition, and we had to sacrifice one of their rooms because they only had a 4-bedroom, so it really goes by bedrooms.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Septic
I
capacity.
think that if there was a component in that where you just had that somebody sign off, like, because we do have that permitting area, where if that's part of the normal process, that could easily be accomplished.
Yes. So do you want to have, when Charlene's back for the February 21st, maybe we'll have that formally on and then see if we could take a vote to support that, if everyone's
yeah, sure.
comfortable doing that, so we can report to town meeting that we've reviewed it and we think that that is a tool to assist in the issues that exist for affordable housing. Certainly creating stock from existing units makes a lot of
And
sense.
for those people who aren't familiar, especially on the show and tell basis, we have come a long way, because the original zoning in the late 90s and early 2000s, I mean, it's almost like you had to stand up on your left foot and raise your right foot 3 inches. It was so precise that you had to have a contiguous wall as part of the extra unit that you were looking for it to even qualify. If it was over a garage, but the garage was detached and it was nonetheless still an existing structure, you couldn't do it. It wasn't permitted at all. So what they're looking at now is actually something that's fairly flexible, and they did do a seminar on this, which I asked Selectman Valentine to go to, and he did. So he's gonna report back on us about what the state's seeing as successful accessory apartment bylaws and ones that aren't. For instance, specifying that it's only for your father-in-law
Right.
family is a bad idea. But there's some pretty innovative stuff that's going on off Cape that we could look at. And again, when we sewer, we may have to consider as the sewer authority what we're doing to our offsets. But it's relatively simple in terms of the health component of this, is as long as you can demonstrate that it's net neutral, and you should be able to do it. And we haven't been taking advantage of that.
And Chris, just as a side, has the administration been talking about hiring someone to, adding on staff to do inspections if these move forward? Like with the rental piece and then the accessory?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, that's a whole
Here I'm
other
just
subject.
thinking of the
I-
impact,
it-
I'm
it's-
thinking of the impact on the watershed and just making sure it's all,
I think that it's kind of interesting, because we do have,
We haven't
this
acted
came
on
up
it yet.
before, and there is actually rules on the books that we're supposed to be doing it. The town has not done the inspections in any coordinated manner, to my
But
knowledge.
it wasn't to the extent that this calls for.
Right.
And
Right.
it could very well, and that was a discussion I think we're gonna have at the board level. Part of this is, if you adopt it, it leaves one to wonder whether it isn't just self-fulfilling, because the money we would generate by doing that, we'd wind up burning by creating new positions to do the inspections.
I can check to see how Barnstable does it, 'cause I'm going
Okay.
through that process right now. They are gonna come out and inspect that that room has been converted, where, in this case, the bedroom that we're sacrificing, we're removing the door casings, so it's just an open pathway or
space,
hallway. So I'll double check how they follow through on that, and their bylaw has some language that, once it's not used for that purpose anymore, it's be converted back. So there's a.
This was a bigger subject. This is about any kind of rental, for
correct.
short-term rentals too.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the short-term rental,
You're
the
talking
fourth,
short-term rentals,
the
yeah.
four-term.
I'm thinking like a
Does
family
it-
apartment.
does it have to does it have to get included
Well,
somehow for
the
the
fourth
town
element, which
meeting?
is voluntary, is
Yeah.
that if we want to create our own local bylaws to basically mirror the state laws and require inspection, we can certainly do that. But that is a separate standalone component if the town wants to go down that direction.
Which
So-
wouldn't affect the other discussion we were just having.
It
about
really wouldn't, yeah.
Accessory apartments. So that's a whole different thing.
That's a whole different.
That's a
okay.
one-off inspection.
I know it's kind of funny that,
Right.
Instead of
as
a
the
year.
administrator, I think, sometimes over-regulating things is not a good thing, because you then have to have resources to do those inspections.
Right, but yeah, I'm just thinking of the water table and,
But unless you alter
It's
the.
based on bedrooms, so it goes back to the
Yeah,
bedrooms.
and if you're doing this for affordability and for the
Right.
accessory
oh no, I
year-round
think it's
use,
a great idea.
you do the inspection, and unless there's a change in the floor plan, you don't do any more inspections. The rental is every year,
Is what it is.
every year
yeah.
per unit.
But the rental units have to do we inspect rental units in this town?
Not in the
Other
manner that they're
towns do.
Not in
suggesting.
the manner in which they're suggesting.
The health
Obviously, if
off-
somebody does improvements to a facility or whatever, then the building inspectors are monitoring that.
So we probably just want to stay
I
focused
believe
on
there is an
the.
inspection
Okay.
form for
Just asking.
rentals. Is
I
there
think we
not?
do have it on file.
On file.
We don't mandate it
I
as.
know
Yeah.
other towns actually inspect. Okay.
But that would be, certainly that's topics that we could certainly cover in additional meetings in terms of, I think we want to just let the dust settle a little bit, so I think as we develop and move forward.
Yeah.
Something to consider, though. It has a potential to be a pretty good revenue source for us, and I think the more we diversify our revenue, probably the better off we'll be
Well,
as a trust.
I wasn't thinking of it like that, but I guess that works. I was thinking about it just for oversight and, things like that. Protection of tenants.
Yeah, actually, in my last community, we had a lot of tenant issues, and it certainly is something that, it deserves some serious merit. I'll put it that way. Okay, on the Affordable Housing Trust, on the funds available, Carol's away this week, I didn't get a chance to get an update, but I believe we're at the 530,000 that we had reported before, probably plus or minus a few dollars.
And that's absent
But
the
in-
CPC's recommendation.
And then, yeah, just on the CPC, they did approve, and thank you again for your attendance, the request for 340,000. Just as a reminder to folks that CPC makes the recommendation, it does go that once the warrant is drafted and put forth, the selectmen would then vote to endorse different articles on there. So if the selectmen endorse it, and if the finance committee recommends it, then it is still subject to town meeting action. But, as I like to say, the more we can get favorable votes on each one of these as we go through the process. So hurdle one, which CPC has been a little bit of a hurdle in the past, but, that's good to get a favorable vote from them. But certainly the selectmen will have it on their agenda, the finance committee will have it on theirs, and then ultimately to town meeting. Okay, other business. I know that
Charts and
Dawn
graphs.
Dawn laid out the opening for your art to come in and do your,
No coordination at all.
How are you doing for time?
9 minutes.
Just a
10
footnote to
minutes.
history, the Affordable Trust Fund is account number 1750.
I'm gonna give you this before I forget.
Account number 1750. And how do I know that?
Because you asked.
Because I tried to find out one time what was in the account. I found out what was in the account, but it took me a while. Anyways, this is for Andrea. This is suitable for framing. The reason I got this thing on here is because it was raining when I left my house. And the Housing Committee put this together 2 years ago. This is a map of Harwich, obviously, and it shows where all the affordable housing is located.
oh, nice.
So it dispels that it's
I'm
not
gonna take a
concentrated.
picture.
Yes.
Well, that was our plan, just so everybody knows we've
So
lived up to
I'm
the
gonna
plan.
leave this with Andrea. Since your office is the library, and that's where the Affordable Housing Committee
Yeah,
meets,
just
we
one or
can
two
look at it
areas.
continually.
That sounds great.
It's just a nice visual. But
Oh,
it's,
thank you.
here's the breakdown, where everything is,
Uh-huh.
what they are. I mean, it's not a complete breakdown, but it is a good working breakdown. Ownership and rental.
Where's that camera going?
And that number is in dispute.
I think she has the one over there.
As of that year?
It's in dispute because there are two pieces of property that are counted as affordable, and they were put on the affordable list back in the early days, and now the state has a different format or something. It's just a paperwork thing.
We
And,
may want to actually get a snapshot of that or whatever, if you have it digitally, or otherwise we can take a picture of it. There has been so much discussion through the years, and as a visual, that dispels that discussion, that why are you putting it all in our area?
Well, there you go. So as we,
It doesn't look
Yeah.
like it's in.
that includes the 6 houses on Oak Street that Habitat built. It does not include the
I
6.
think what we'll do is, we can have a, you know, if you leave it, I'll take it, put it in my office, then we'll set a little easel up and have a little, you know, area in town hall here. But I think to Don's point, the more we can get an image and put it on for Channel 18 or on the website. We do have a website component that's dedicated to the Affordable Housing Trust, so why not put that on there?
Great idea.
Anyways,
That's great.
there you go. Now, I got some.
Did you have anything else, Art?
Well,
'Cause
it's
Dave
just
wanted
a
to-
quick rundown, because I know the time is short. And Andrea should be tooting these horns about the upcoming sessions you have.
Yes.
Everybody on the board going?
I don't know. I'm not sure if I mentioned this at the last meeting, but we have a Chapter 40B workshop coming up on February 7th at the Harwich Community Center from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. I sent an e-blast out last week, so if you didn't get it, then you're not on my list, and if you want to be on
Not
my list,
your
then
list. Okay.
send me your email. But Judy Barrett, who's an incredible speaker and knows everything about everything, is going to be running the workshop. It's kind of targeted towards ZBA members, but it's for everybody, but she will be going through the process from a ZBA perspective. There'll be a handbook that goes with it. It's going to be really, really useful. So
You said 5 to 7 at the community center on
That's right.
February 7th?
Thursday, February 7th.
Chris, can we send out an email, because that was my complaint a
And
year and a
then,
half ago.
Oh, and I just want to say something to note is that it's actually happening the night of Brewster's trust meeting, and they've actually converted their meeting into the training, so they're all coming to the training. It's kind of an interesting approach. This doesn't coincide with your meeting, but
I need to
they will
finish
all be
this
there.
thought, because
Oh, yeah.
it's really important for our ZBA members to be highly encouraged to go to this. The last time I had an interface with them was about a year and a half, 2 years ago, with the West Harwich Habitat and Hesh project. And one person actually blurted out, well, it just seems like you're doing this so you can gain advantage and do something you wouldn't be normally eligible to do. I'm like, yeah, that's the whole law.
That's the point, though.
But they
Yeah.
didn't quite get that, because it sounded sinister when it came out that way. They really don't get to see a lot of these.
Right.
And they really need to be encouraged to go, because 40B, it does allow you to do more than you would have, but there's a public purpose to it. I mean, and it's a commendable purpose, if you know how it's being used and used right. We don't have, most of, and I think you would know this from your end of the operation, most of the 40Bs that go on Cape Cod are friendly 40Bs, whereas there's a sponsor of some nonprofit organization that's building them. They don't leverage the 75% that they could get out of the new zoning that they get from the blood money of the 25% affordable housing that's been the point of contention off Cape in a lot of places. And if people understood that better, they'd understand why it's a good tool. It's not being used to shove things down people's throats, where I could get 7 more $2 million homes on this property if I could just give homage to a few other affordable units. And you know what? If I don't sell them, that's great, because they'll flip to market rates anyway eventually. That is not a problem that we're having. I'm
So
pretty sure you'd agree with that.
how do we sign up for that? I'm available, so I'd like to go to that, so,
Well, if you, let's see,
and if,
can we do this through email? And people just send me their contact information?
okay.
Because I do need to register you all.
Do you have all of our emails?
You know, I'm not sure that I do.
We should, well, you obviously have mine
Yeah,
and
yours.
and Dawn's.
Well, of course, mine would be contingent on gain access to it.
Well, I will say there are
Oh, we're
only,
not all on the group email?
maybe when Charlene sent the
I
packet,
can't get it here.
I've got all of you.
I can't
I'll
get it
double
on
check.
my phone.
But if there's anyone here that's definitely interested in going, I can go ahead and register.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll go, I have available. You said 5 to 7 on the
Correct.
7th.
I'd like to go as well.
Perfect.
Yeah,
I
same
only
here.
have 10 spots left, so
Okay,
Oh, you only have 10 spots left?
Yeah, if there's enough interest, I could plan another one.
Are you
Hoping
on
we
that
can
one?
populate with 5 more.
Yes, okay, good.
Okay, so I'm
I have
in
it.
there. Thanks.
Thank you.
We need
Thank
to
you.
strongly encourage them.
Andrea, I'm going, but I don't know if I actually logged
Okay,
on
I'll check
correctly.
for you.
I'm still having a problem with,
All
but
right,
that's
I
me,
got
probably
you,
not
Art.
you.
So we're
the-
coming up on 4:30, so,
Okay.
Art, why don't you give
Two
your
two
last
things, I'll
thing
make it
and
quick. The second thing is on the advanced training that you're having on the 23rd of February.
So that is actually not for municipal officials, although I will not restrict it if someone feels strongly about going. But we
Okay.
are holding our second annual Cape Housing Advocacy Training, which is for community members. The Housing Institute is specifically for town officials. The advocacy training is for sort of everybody else. And I do have several town officials that are actually coming. But I'm glad you mentioned that because I can send you information about the training, but this might be a nice time to say that as part of the training, we have a section where people get to learn what's going on in their town. And what I'd like to do is bring a town official from each town to come talk to the group. And so I think someone from this committee would actually be perfect to be a part of the training, to talk to the participants about what's going on in Harwich, build some relationships, get some feedback. Maybe that could inform future public relations activities and kind of get that group of people a little more developed. So,
That's for a future agenda,
When is that?
or
well,
for this
February
particular meeting?
23rd.
this is, I would talk to you about it separately if you're interested in helping with that, but the trainings are on February 2nd for the Outer Cape, and then February 23rd for the Lower Cape. So I would imagine we'd have more Harwich people on the February 3rd training. And I'd love to have one of you attend.
You mean 23rd?
23rd.
23rd.
What did I
I
say?
just said 3rd.
Sorry.
It's like,
February 23rd is
lost
the
third
Saturday.
The 3rd is for the other one,
just
you
lost 3
said.
weeks.
February 2nd is in Wellfleet.
Well, for the other.
February 23rd is in Harwich.
I think that's the week of school vacation
Okay.
here.
Chris lives
I
in
think it is school
Scheduled, I mean,
vacation,
that's not
yeah.
changing.
Um,
But
I
can-
don't know if that affects your numbers of,
And the last little thing I have is, the Voter Information Committee is trying to get together a presentation on Channel 18 of all the committee heads in town to give, a little spiel as what they're doing and why they're
Yeah.
doing it, a
Nice.
30-minute commercial type thing. From what I understand, you're having a little hard time filling up the room, so to speak. So I just threw that out there, since I signed up for it, and I figured, well,
Thank you.
everyone loves company. Thank you very much.
Anyone else for other business?
Chris, I was just gonna mention that, I don't know if you would like to be able to take that graphic from that. You could put that on the GIS system.
oh,
Oh, we could scan it and then have it
So
on
we could-
GIS?
Not scan it.
no, like
Literally,
down,
we could-
yeah, make
we
a
could
layer.
build it So the individual parcels would show up and people could zoom in and out. And
He has an overlay on it.
I don't know if they
Yeah.
would want to do that or not, but it just is a,
Just the guy that can do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, my engineer has retired, so I'm in the market for looking for an engineer, so.
I've been doing the GIS for the town.
If I hear a volunteer, I may take you up on the volunteer.
But to my original point, I
Yeah,
would
I
love
get
it
that.
to be
It's all
almost
done, so.
immediately on, if we could just take a digital shot of it
I
on the internet, so that everybody could see
We could do that.
the deployment of the houses. It would even be better if they could see it relative to the real houses.
I tend to think things long-term in the sense that if you've got a spreadsheet with these addresses on it and a map and parcel number, it's literally
Yeah.
20 minutes of time and you could build build it in ArcGIS.
Because I think we've been
That would
really
be really
successful in what
nice.
the original housing plan called for, which was, we were going to integrate this in all the 7 villages of Harwich, and it was just going to be spread all around. There wasn't going to be a place where those people lived. And it pretty much demonstrates that that's what's happening. We have made sure that it's spread all around town, and you're your neighbors. It's not that you're living in that corner. And it's real important for everybody to understand that they're your neighbors.
So I'll keep that in my office, so you don't have to worry
Thank
about
you.
it, and that way we can, I'll make sure we get that on there. Any other business under old business, other business? If not, then just make a note that our next meeting is February 21st, same time here, 3 o'clock. And with that as noted, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Chris, can
Sorry.
I need to confirm if I'm gonna be, that's that school
School vacation week.
My daughter's a high school senior, so we might be
Well, if Larry can Skype
Visiting
from Florida, you can
schools.
Skype from the ski resort.
ski resort, no. Oh, no, looking at colleges.
Oh, boy. Wow.
Okay.
If I do need to Skype, is there a process I need to go through?
I was gonna say, you could ask Brandon. He figured it out last time.
I could, oh, you weren't here last time, but we were, maybe you were.
No, I mean, is there like a
There
procedure?
is, but we have to make sure that we have a quorum
Oh.
in place before that can even occur.
Because you
Yes.
can't have a,
Actually, we do need to have
Be an
a note
external.
that goes to the selectmen that you want to be authorized to do remote participation.
and if
and
it's
then
the
the
three of
selectmen
you,
did
is that a
vote.
Yeah.
quorum?
We'll approve it, I mean, that's not a big problem.
We need to have, yeah, physically, we need to have a quorum here, and
I
then we
can
could
make
have.
What do we need for a
Do we
quorum?
we don't even need to have the selectmen approval.
No,
though,
because we
we're
have an
outside.
in-place policy for it.
So if you just send a note
This
to-
isn't long-term use of Skype, it's just,
Yeah.
she's.
And I may
used-
be here, I just,
Okay, yeah, if you,
but
if,
is the three of you enough for a quorum?
Yeah,
yeah, because there's only
Okay.
5, so we would be good, yeah.
you're not asking for long-term Skype
No.
participation. I don't
Just
think
for the school
so. We've
vacation
already
week, yeah,
adopted
Yeah.
that as a process for one off.
for one off. Okay,
You'll be available, right? Yeah, so I'll be here and you'll
I'll be here, so we have 3. And
And
motion to
I
adjourn?
may be here. Second?
No, you don't.
I'm making the motion. I'll second it too. No,
No, you
I'll
can't.
make, I'm kidding.
Gotta have everybody showing up.
Thank you, folks.
Okay, thank
You
you.
take a vote, but I'm assuming we are adjourned.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Hey, did you open up the meeting?